Organizers have announced they're going to honor a man called Oscar Lopez Rivera during the parade. Who's he? Well, just a terrorist, literally. Lopez Rivera was the leader with the FALN, a Puerto Rican paramilitary group that was committing all kinds of attacks throughout the United States in the 70s and 80s in an effort to make Puerto Rico communist. They murdered 5 people in New York during a series of bombings. Lopez Rivera would still be in prison for as many crimes, but President Obama commuted his sentence just before leaving office with very little fanfare since the press didn't really bother to cover it, and he went free. Jermaine Williams is on the City Council of New York City, and he signed a letter praising Lopez Rivera, declaring solidarity with him. I'm not even sure what to say about this. I mean, you represent New York City, a city you'd think would be sensitive to terror, and yet you're endorsing an admitted terrorist. There's no debate about what the guy did. He admitted it. So why would you do that?
So one, I'm going to be marching the Puerto Rican Day Parade to celebrate the heritage and the culture there. Two, Mr. Lopez has said that he hasn't committed any violent crimes and hasn't been associated with violent crimes. And lastly, a lot of these things depends on the vantage point that we're looking at. And so Nelson Mandela was a terrorist until 2008, 5 years before his death by the United States government. And so a lot of times people are conflating and they use violence, as they say, as a separation. But what they're trying to say.
I don't even know. You didn't even do your research. I mean, what do you mean you didn't admit it? He did admit it. He was convicted. He was convicted. Hold, slow down. I actually read contemporaneous news reports today. In 1981, he went on trial. He was convicted of armed robbery and bomb making and a bunch of other things. He admitted that he did it. Then President Clinton tried to offer him clemency if only he would renounce violence, and he wouldn't. So there's no debate that the guy committed acts of violence. He admitted to armed robbery. Because they didn't recognize the United States, they actually didn't put up a defense. And so everyone, the United States just went ahead and did their own case. But he has renounced violence. That's not true. He was tried in our justice system and admitted that he committed armed robbery and made bombs.
That aside, we should get to the real point. And so many people conflate saying, I don't believe in the tools of the cause, when they really just don't believe in the cause to begin with. So I submit to you, what strategy should be used to fight for one's freedom, justice, and equity?
How about the strategy they use in Puerto Rico, which is having referenda where the Puerto Ricans get to vote on whether they want to be an independent country or a state or a territory, which they regularly do. They do that all the time. You obviously don't follow this in any detail. You're glomming on the guy because he's a fashionable communist, but he's also a terrorist.
Again, Nelson Mandela was viewed as a terrorist till 2008.
But are you really comparing him to Nelson Mandela?
Martin Luther King was the most dangerous man in America by the FBI. He was shot and killed violently. What we're saying, and we do this very often.
Did Martin Luther King commit armed robbery?
What we're saying
you could say that. No, what are you saying?
What I'm saying is we conflate a lot of issues. We oftentimes don't believe in the cause.
You're conflating issues. I'm not even attacking the cause. I'm merely saying armed robbery and making bombs are not legitimate forms of political expression.
Well,
and you are saying they are.
The United States has supported people who have done violent acts in the course of getting their freedom across the world. What we tend to do is...
I'm not for that. Are you for that?
I'm not. What I'm saying is, what I'm saying is we should be consistent. And so when the St. Patrick's Day Parade celebrated the IRA by having them in their parade, the NYPD did not participate, possibly because there was a lot of Irish in the NYPD.
I guess I'm against that too, but I don't understand. What do you... I mean, look, you could say the same thing about Timothy McVeigh. He thought he was committing an act of war against the United States. How would you have felt if President Bush had commuted his sentence before his execution and he was honored in a parade?
Yeah, but so now you're comparing different things. We have a colony that has no representation and can't vote for president, can't vote in Congress, and what they're saying is they either want statehood or they want independence.
They get to vote. Now, again, I'm trying to be patient, but you don't know anything about this. They get to vote on whether they want... Okay, then are you aware that they get to vote, popular vote, on whether they want to be their own country? And they don't. I think they should, by the way. They don't because they get so much in aid from the United States.
No, but there are some people who actually do and have been fighting it for some time. The question is, what do we do when people are fighting for their freedom and justice. And so often we try to pretend.
So it's legitimate to commit armed
what I'm
robbery.
saying is I don't condone that. I support nonviolent. But what I'm saying is
not.
even when we do nonviolent resistance, whether it's sitting down for the Pledge of Allegiance, whether it's simply people saying Black Lives Matter, people get excoriated with the same language.
You
so
are a demagogue who's endorsing violent behavior. You're an elected official who is making excuses for violent behavior, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
People oftentimes pretend they prefer one strategy over another when they just don't prefer any strategy at all.
Well, I don't prefer armed robbery. It's pretty simple. And you're in a position of responsibility.
Absolutely.
People voted for you. They look to you. They take their cues from you. And you should say unequivocally,
nobody... But this country...
You're supporting a guy who admitted to armed robbery, and you're saying it was a revolutionary act.
People who became the Taliban. This country has supported Saddam Hussein. So we are saying one thing for a group of people
when
and
things
another
fall
for another.
apart, it's people like you who will be responsible for them. People who told their constituents it's okay to use violence.
Who actually try to conflate issues. But what I'm saying to you, whatever it is that is brought up when it comes to strategies for freedom and justice, the people who are privileged usually try to dictate what should be done and who people should celebrate.
All of us, of all colors and all incomes, can agree that armed robbery is not legitimate. You can't agree.
No, what I'm saying to you is,
I'm out of time, Councilman. Whoa.